With Positive Coaching Alliance for this youth sports chat session with Samantha Salvia. We're going to be talking all things social media today, so if you're tuning in and you have some questions for us, please chat us below and let us know. Really anything in regards to youth sports, but we are going to be talking about social media, so we hope to hear from you about that topic. Sam Salvia is an awesome PCA trainer. She leads live workshops for Positive Coaching Alliance all over the Bay Area and also around the country. And Sam is an NCAA Division I field hockey champion and was actually Old Dominion's first Rhodes Scholar. So she has a very impressive background, and she's now a competitive ultimate frisbee player. And she plays on the Masters national team, traveling around to London, all over the world really, to play ultimate frisbee. So she has an impressive background. So to kick us off, Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the workshops that you've led with high schools around the Bay Area in regards to social media use?
Should I hold this? Oh, you got it? Okay, great. That sounds great. Thanks. Great. I'm excited to have this discussion about social media on social media. It seems really appropriate. So I've led several workshops for Positive Coaching Alliance with athletes, mostly high school athletes, around social media use. And so far I've started off each one with the same two questions. The first question I've asked is, how many people here have posted or texted something that they wouldn't say to someone's face? And usually there's a lot of hands that go up. And then the second question is, how many of you athletes have read something that was posted about you online that was hurtful? And then every hand goes up. And so that usually is a way that I kick off the workshop, and I start talking about social media as a tool. You know, sometimes I'm sure we're going to get into today talking about all the ways that it can be used poorly, but in the end it's a tool. And one of the stories that I sometimes tell is I have two sons, and one of them takes a kids carpentry class at our rec center. And they use, he was 6 when he started taking this class. They use all real tools. And I remember the first day I dropped him off, there was a really large first aid kit, like tackle box size first aid kit. And I turned to the instructor and I said, John, how often are you dipping into that first aid kit? And he got really serious and he looked at me and he said, I have been teaching this class for years and I have never pulled more than a Band-Aid out of this first aid kit. And I'm looking around at these 6, 7, 8-year-olds with saws and egg beater drills and hammers and thinking, that is incredible. How do you explain that? And he said, I teach the kids how to use the tools so that no one gets hurt. And so when I'm thinking about how we use social media and this tool that you've got in your hand and that our athletes have in their hands almost 24/7, it's really just understanding how the tool works so that nobody gets hurt, self-inflicted or otherwise.
Absolutely. I love that. And speaking of tool in my hand, I am holding this phone in my hand to read the questions that you guys are going to be asking. So if you have questions, I already see a couple coming through. Please do chat and ask us. Thank you for sharing that story, Sam. We're talking all things social media and high school and youth sports and beyond. Have a question, please chat us. Oscar Fick, thanks for tuning in. Oscar asked, could you talk about how joking around on social media can be misunderstood? It's a great question, and I might jump in here quickly and just say I feel like sometimes you can't read tone over text. And so if you and I are bantering back and forth in a, what we think is a friendly way, if someone else reading that who doesn't maybe know us, they could potentially think that that's not friendly. And so just being careful about the way that your text is reading. Tone always can't be interpreted in the same way that you mean it to be. And Sam, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that in regards to joking around can be misunderstood.
Well, I'm just reminded that there's a series of insurance commercials that are on television right now where it's the exact same script but two completely opposite situations. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where one, it's a girl walks out, 16-year-old girl, and says, oh, is this my car? And she's all excited. And then someone else walks out and sees this car on blocks and says, is this my car? And it reminds me of the same kind of thing. When you lack the context, which you don't have on social media, it can be really easily misinterpreted.
Totally. Oscar, thanks for that question. For those of you just tuning in, Positive Coaching Alliance, we're here in the San Francisco Bay Area at our headquarters in Mountain View. I'm here with Sam Salvia, one of our awesome trainers who leads workshops on the topic of social media around here. I see that Adam Yuratovic tuned in and said, yee. Thank you, Adam. I know that you are an expert on social media as well, so feel free to tune in and actually, chime in with your thoughts as well. So thank you. Corvell Brandon, thanks for your question as well. Corvell's wondering, could you please explain the effects social media has on a potential recruit? I know this is definitely a hot topic, Corval. We get a ton of questions about this on our online resource center. So great question. I'm sure that a lot of others are wondering about this. So Sam, what are your takes on social media and recruiting?
Yeah, well, I love that Adam is on. Adam is an expert in social media use and athletes. He works with athletes on their branding, and he's got a great video on PCA DevZone right now in which he talks about how coaches will look at maybe a year of your social media online feed in about 30 seconds and form a snap judgment about you and about you as a recruit. One thing I think at PCA we consistently hear from the college coaches that we work with is that they do look at athletes' social media feeds. It's another piece of information. In fact, Pat Fitzgerald, who's a football coach at Northwestern, has a wonderful video on our PCA DevZone in which he talks about how he actually hires out, I think, a third party that actively monitors all the social media feeds of their active recruits. Now, not everybody's a Division I football recruit, and that's not going to apply, but I think it's safe to say at every level in every sport, employers, I think I saw, I think I have it here actually, 40% of college admissions officers, according to Kaplan Test Prep research, look at social media profiles when they're considering a candidate. So it's not just athletes, it's recruits, it's employment, it's college admissions are looking at your feed.
Absolutely. And just to go one step further, I know David Shaw, who's the head football coach at Stanford, he actually talks about on their pro day at Stanford where the scouts come in from the NFL and they want to see the players, the current college athletes, work out to be potential NFL players. They actually ask all of the student athletes at Stanford to turn over their social media platforms and let them know, list out every single platform that they have, because those NFL teams are making huge investments in those college athletes, recruiting them to become in the NFL, and they want to know what is this person all about, both online and in person as an athlete. So, Corval, great question. Alex Liswa, thank you for your question and thank you for tuning in. Alex was saying that she heard about fake Instagram accounts, a Finsta. How can student athletes deal with this and make sure they are using social media appropriately? Alex, I've heard about Finstas. I anticipate Sam may have as well. Thanks for asking that question, Alex. And Sam, what are your thoughts on using Finstas? We'll talk more about Finstas, but what is a Finsta? Let's start there.
So, well, I think neither of us are complete experts in this, but what the athletes that I work with tell me is that they'll often have one Instagram account that is the one that their parents know about or their coaches know about, and then they'll have a second account that's a smaller group, a subset of their friends that they're posting stuff to, and they call it a Finstagram account or Finsta. So I think big picture, the challenge with social media is that it's a space that feels private but is actually public. And so I think about Finsta accounts the same way I think about any social media account, that everything is just one screenshot away from being public. And actually, when I was doing a workshop with some athletes in the Bay Area, we were talking. The Finsta came up because I put up on my slide, posts are public, permanent, and potentially used to judge you. Do you think this is true? And the athletes started saying things like, "Well, yes, but there's Snapchat," or "Yes, but Finsta." And I think that's some of the sort of dangerous thinking, right? If it feels semi-private, but it's really a public space.
Absolutely. Anything you tweet out, put on Snapchat, like you said, is one screenshot away, and it's never private. Someone can always access it and find those accounts. So I think just being conscious and thinking about, what could I show this to my grandmother? Could I say this to my mom, to her face, or my dad, or whoever? Could you say that and be happy about it and be proud of what you're saying? If you can't, you probably shouldn't post it on social media. So great question, Alex, and thanks for tuning in. For those of you who are tuning in just now, Positive Coaching Lines here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm with PCA trainer Sam Salvi, an NCAA Division I champion in field hockey, Old Dominion's first Rhodes Scholar, and now a very competitive on the Masters national team for Ultimate Frisbee. She's a rock star. And so, yeah, if you have questions, chat us in. I'm following along here on my phone. If you see me watching my phone, it's because I'm reading your questions. So, Brian Navarro, thank you for your question. And he is wondering, what are your thoughts on parents selling their kids on YouTube for select and club teams at a young age, starting at 7 years old? YouTube is definitely a social media platform. I think it's actually the second most searched platform, second to Google. So YouTube's definitely, millions and millions of views. So great question. What are your thoughts on parents using YouTube as a platform to sell their kids starting at 7 years old? It's really early. Okay. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's see. Gosh, I think the fact that the questioner used the word sell suggests that maybe they've got a kind of negative view of this. And I'm not sure whether this is a question about social media as much as the fact that recruiting is getting earlier and earlier, and parents have their kids in youth sports for a lot of different reasons. So I think the angle I want to take on this response is thinking about parents' motivations for why their kids are in youth sports in the first place. So Positive Coaching Alliance, our mission is better athletes, better people. It's having kids find joy in sports and find a character building experience in sports. And when we do workshops with parents, as we do all across the country, one of the exercises we do in almost every one of our parent workshops, we call it our 100-point exercise. And we encourage parents to allocate 100 points to various goals they might have for their kids in youth sports. And for the most part, parents, their goals for their kids are acquiring life skills and learning life lessons, how to compete, how to deal with adversity and resilience. I was just speaking with a member of our leadership council this morning who shared with me that he feels like youth sports is one of the last places where many kids can still experience tremendous adversity and overcome it. So when I hear about parents using YouTube to have their kids recruited at younger and younger ages, it just makes me wonder about what those parents' goals are for youth sports. And to me, it's less about the platform and more about really keeping the kids at the center of the experience and thinking about what we want them to get out of it.
Absolutely. And we have that 100-point exercise that Sam talked about on our Resource Center. We'll follow up after this live chat and share it with all of you. I think some parents and kids are fascinated on what comes out on either side, and it's a great teaching and learning tool for both the parent and the athlete. Brian says thanks. So thank you, Brian, for that great question. So Matt Mastratuno, I'm sorry if I didn't get your last name right, but Matt is wondering, well, first he says Sam is the best. Sam, what are ways you use social media to build positive relationships among teammates? I know I have some thoughts here, but I want to get your thoughts first, Sam. What are ways you can use social media to build positive relationships among teammates? Thanks for tuning in, Matt.
I am so happy that Matt asked that question. Matt's someone that I know through Ultimate Frisbee who produces documentaries and really uses video and as a tool to make the world a better place. So I'm thrilled that question came in from Matt. You know, we started at the beginning of this Facebook Live broadcast talking about how social media is a tool, and it really does depend on how you use it. And I see so many wonderful ways that teams are using social media to elevate themselves, to show respect for their opponent, to promote their sport. You know, Team USA is getting ready to head to the World's Game. The World Games are starting in Poland this week, and the U.S. is sending an Ultimate Frisbee team. And today, one of those players is guest hosting on the USA Ultimate Snapchat page. So I think there's tons of ways that you see teams and individuals use social media positively to promote themselves, promote their sport, show respect to their opponent. And, you know, when we just were talking about recruiting, you can imagine what it looks like to a college coach when instead of seeing a bunch of posts criticizing an opponent, they see an athlete showing respect to their opponent. I mean, imagine that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and one thing that comes to mind, too, is Jed Meddy. He's on our San Francisco Bay Area chapter board. He's an executive with the San Jose Earthquakes, the MLS team. He has a video in our Resource Center where he talks about using social media in a positive way when a teammate makes a mistake, actually. So, like in a soccer game, for example, if one of your teammates scores an own goal, and after the game tweeting out like something like, you know, we still have your back, or no big deal, brush it off, publicly stating your support for a teammate who may be getting bashed for a bad turnover or an own goal is a really positive way that social media can be used to be a good teammate. So, Matt, thank you for that question. Thanks for tuning in. For those of you just tuning in, Positive Coaching Alliance here in the Bay Area, if you see me looking at my phone, it's because I'm reading your questions that are coming in. So please continue to bring them, please continue to chat them, and we will get them answered. I'm here with Samantha Salvia, our PCA trainer, national champion, Division I field hockey, Rhodes Scholar, and Ultimate Frisbee, super competitive on the national team, Masters, traveling all over the world playing. So, Jamie Browning, thanks for watching, Jamie. Jamie is wondering, shouldn't a parent keep tabs on a child's social media account until college? Sam, what are your thoughts on that? Keeping tabs on social media accounts?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from the other parents that are tuning in if they want to go ahead and put in their comment box what approach they use. So my kids are 5 and 9 right now, so they don't yet have their social media accounts, although they're not far from it. I mean, I think a lot of kids start having accounts when they're in middle school, and I think there's different approaches that parents take. one parent shared with me that her approach is that she insists that her kids allow her to follow them on all of their social media accounts, and in exchange she promises not to post anything or like anything or in any way show her mom presence at all. But the kids know that anything they're posting that mom can see. So I think that's one approach. And again, I'm going to just keep coming back to this analogy of it's a tool, and arguably it's a power tool that they have with them all the time. So just like we would ease our kids into using a pocket knife slowly, or ease them into using tools slowly, I think monitoring them as appropriate and knowing your child.
Yeah.
And we'll see how I tackle this one, but I think I like that idea of insisting that you be allowed to follow them on social media, but promising to stay in the background.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Thank you for that question. And again, yeah, other parents, if you want to weigh in and chat to Jamie's question and let us know what you think the appropriate age is as well. So Kyle Congleton, thanks for tuning in. Kyle asked, what are some quick things a coach can use to set up a healthy social media pre-NCW for a high school team? I might jump in here and just share that I think one of the big things Positive Coaching Alliance believes is setting expectations early and addressing things on the forefront so that when certain things happen throughout the season, you have already, set rules, set boundaries, and you know what's expected of you and what's going to happen. And so we actually worked with our student athlete advisory board, which is made up of high school students, to create this student athlete social media agreement. And so we have this on our website and we can follow up with you, but this is a great tool to, kick off your season. And I think Sam's actually, I'll pass it over to you, but I think Sam's worked with teams as well to have it be a collective effort. What do we as a team want our team values and our social media stance to be? Develop it together so that everybody has buy-in, and then we move forward using that agreement. We do have a tool to help, guide that. But Sam, anything else you want to share on that? And Kyle, thanks again for that question.
Yeah, I love the idea of having athletes take ownership and develop their own policies. So many of the athletes we work with, they're really savvy about this stuff. They've had social media accounts probably longer than their parents have. And that's one of the things I love about PCA's social media agreement is that student athletes help develop it. And it's got a question on here that says, I will consider, is this the me I want you to see before I post anything online? I was working with a rowing club in the Bay Area and leading a workshop in which we had the athletes develop their own social media policy. And one of the questions that came out of it that really stuck with me was one of the athletes said, I think before we post anything, we should ask, will it make the boat go faster? And I just loved that question because I love that. It's so memorable. It's so simple. And there's so much in there. Will it make the boat go faster, right? Is it going to make the person in the boat pull harder for you? Is it going to elevate us as a team and help us do what we want to accomplish? So, that was not something that PCA would have, or any coach could have given them. It came from the kids, and I think they're going to use it.
Yeah. Will it make the boat go faster? I love that. Thanks for that question. And kind of along the same lines, Matt York. Matt, thanks for tuning in. Matt is asked, what is the role of the coach in social media? For example, in the framework of monitoring athletes or teams, discipline stance, code of conduct, implementation. What do you think is the role of the coach?
Yeah, that's a big question, and I'd love to hear, again, if we have some commenters that have some thoughts on that. I think the kind of things I would be thinking about as a coach when I'm figuring out what my role is the ages of the athletes and also the type of team that it is, and what sort of, I think, again, coming back to that setting a culture and setting expectations up front. Mm-hmm. So if it's a school team, for example, you're representing your school every time you put a uniform on. And I know a lot of schools do have a code of conduct. And the expectation is that athletes are not just going to leave the sportsmanship on the field. They're going to take it off the field. When I was prepping for some of the social media workshops, Adam Yurtovac and I talked, and he mentioned the term positive digital citizenship, which I really like. And I think we think a lot about citizenship in school. We think about sportsmanship on the field. And to me, having an expectation that athletes are going to extend that sportsmanship or that positive digital citizenship off the field is realistic and something to talk to athletes about. Most of the coaches that I work with don't actively monitor their players' social media feeds, especially if you're coaching a team with 20 athletes. But there's an expectation that if something inappropriate happens or if there's a concern, that either that athlete or one of their teammates is going to be an upstander and bring that up and help the team address it.
Yeah. Definitely. Thanks for that. For those of you just tuning in, Positive Coaching Alliance here in the Bay Area, if you see me following along on my phone, it's because I'm watching your questions come in. We will get to them, and we see them continuing to be asked, so thank you for that. I'm here with Sam Salia, PCA trainer, NCAA Division I champion in field hockey, Old Dominion's first Rhodes Scholar, and Masters Nationals team ultimate Frisbee player. So pretty awesome person sitting right next to me, so keep the questions coming in. Carolyn Matthews chatted in and asked, can you talk about accessibility concerns as it applies to social media use on teams? I imagine that some kids get left out of a team and that not all players necessarily have access to the internet. Great question, Kaylin. Tough question. Sam, what are your thoughts on kids getting left out of social media if they don't have access to the internet?
That is a really great question, Carolyn. Thank you for asking it. And I think it speaks to a bigger issue around access and pay to play and some of the other things that we tackle as part of Positive Coaching Alliance. I will say that anything that creates exclusion on teams, creates problems. And there was a dance studio that I was working with that was having some challenges around social media use, specifically around group texts. And I'm a huge fan of teams using group texts for bonding and chemistry, and nearly every team I've been a part of now uses them. There was an article last year that the Golden State Warriors credit group text as being critical to their chemistry. And on that team, they were creating subgroups that didn't include all the dancers and then talking about other dancers on them. So I don't know a ton about the specific data on accessibility to social media use, but I know that anytime you've got a situation where there's some kids that are excluded, it really creates negative, potentially toxic team dynamics. And I think the bigger issue of accessibility in sports, whether it's to social media or to teams and fields and resources, is a really big and important topic.
Great. Yeah, that's a tough question. And Carolyn, thanks for that question. Deidre Abrahamson has chatted in saying, fellow ultimate Frisbee player, used to be on the UPA board with your husband back in the day. So she's wondering, what are some things that you tell your athletes about personal branding and how to use these platforms to their advantage? That positive digital citizenship you kind of touched on, but how can we use it in a positive way?
Yeah, Adam in his piece on the Dev Zone talks about how your online presence, your social media presence is your online resume. And so I think those kinds of questions, like not just asking, is it something you'd say to someone's face, or are you okay with your mom seeing it, but actually thinking about, is this the me that I want people to see? Sometimes I feel like social media gets knocked because it's not real, and we can kind of curate the personality, the personality that we show. And I think in some ways that's a positive part. Why would we not put our highest and best self out on it? And when I've done some workshops with athletes, I think that branding analogy is a really good one. Mm-hmm. We've all, even those of us that went to high school before social media existed, we had a brand that we were trying to, we were a jock or a nerd or whatever it was, but social media is a tool that really amplifies that brand. And thinking about it in those terms, thinking about it as a way to present your highest and best self is one of the things that we talk to athletes about.
Yep. Great question. Thanks for asking. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you just joining Positive Coaching Alliance here, we're a national nonprofit. If you like our page and if you like our content, if you like these live chats, we hope you'll consider pressing the donate button that's right below this feed. We depend on the support from our online community across the U.S., across the globe, and we would really appreciate you considering pressing that donate button. Any amount helps. And again, thank you for considering that. Mark Coles, thanks for tuning in, Mark. Mark is wondering, how do you identify that a young player may be suffering from depression or going through tough times, be it at school or at home? And he's saying, do we agree that we need to educate our coaches better in this area rather than just focusing on the sport? Mark, thank you for asking that question. And Sam, what are your thoughts on coaches being more aware of that area? Yeah,
these are some really great questions. I feel like we don't have the kind of time and or maybe necessarily the expertise to dive into them as much as I would like. But if you're asking me if I think that that coaches can all do with some more education, and especially around coaching the whole person and not just the sport, absolutely. that's really the premise of Positive Coaching Alliance. We talk about being sports agnostic because we believe that the tools that we have are applicable regardless of what sport you happen to be using as the vehicle to develop better athletes and better people. And I think that's a great question about the extent to which there might be signs on someone's social media that they're experiencing depression or other mental health issues. And I'm in no way an expert on that, but I am certainly in favor of any additional resources for coaches that can help them work with athletes, work with the whole person, and not just the athlete on the field. So I think it's an interesting question. I hadn't really even thought about that as another way that social media might be used.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Thank you for that question. Monica Hopi, thanks for tuning in, Monica. For those of you just tuning in, if you see me looking at my phone, I'm taking your questions. We're here with Samantha Salvia, PCA trainer. And if you have questions about social media or other questions in regards to youth or high school sports, we'll be online for a little while longer, so please chat us and we will get to your questions. So Monica is saying, how do you explain to kids that not everyone does social media? Good question. And I think there are some kids and quite a few people who don't do social media, but how would you explain that, Sam?
Well, is it Monica who asked that question?
Yes.
Maybe Monica can comment in with a little more about what she's trying to explain to the kids, because I'm not quite sure what she's really asking. If it's how to help kids better understand how to use social media, or I guess I'm not really sure why we want kids to understand not everybody's on it. So
yeah, and I would just say, like, I think it's fine if certain kids choose not, or families choose not to allow their kids to use social media at a certain point. I think you just have to explain that, just because you use social media doesn't mean that everyone needs to use social media. Some people choose not to and may not want to be involved with that. So yeah, if you can chat us anything more about that, we would appreciate it. So again, keep the questions coming. I'm reading them here on my phone. We'll be online for a little while longer. Andre Mansour, thanks for tuning in. Tough question here. Should the NCAA be able to regulate the social media of athletes? Is this an infringement of their rights? Tough question, Andre. Sam, what's your opinion? Sam was a NCAA Division I field hockey player, champion at Old Dominion. I also played basketball at NCAA level. But what's your take? Do you think NCAA should be able to regulate that?
I love how we've moved from like mental health questions to now legal questions. We're really getting softballs here while we're on Facebook Live. So, gosh, I don't know. My blink on that is no. You're getting into free speech issues, and already the NCAA has arguably more influence on athletes than they should. I guess that's my quick response to that.
Yeah, and I would just say, similar back to high school student athletes and youth athletes, setting expectations on the front end and knowing, so if I choose to be a student athlete for the NCAA, there are certain expectations about how I'm going to use my social media. And if I choose not to, there could be regulations or there could be consequences of my actions. And so I think, again, setting those expectations both at the high school and at the NCAA level as a coach from the league, what are those expectations? Have that be a conversation and then uphold whatever happens for the rest of the year. Andre, great question. Again, this is a chat. It's a community. So if other people want to share their thoughts on Andre's comment, please do that. Just click reply right under him. Keep the questions coming. I'm here with Sam Salvia, PCA trainer. We're here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Alex Lizwa asked a question. Alex, thanks again for tuning in. So she is wondering, is it true that professional sports leagues have certain social media rules or policies for their athletes? Sam, do you know that? I believe that's true. I believe that, yes, that professional leagues take it very seriously. Obviously, many athletes are being paid millions of dollars. It's a huge investment from the league, and so they want to make sure that they're, going to get the right character, right person. And you're going to jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I think that the professional athletes and the leagues that they play for are worried about risk management, and so I know athletes have contracts that limit the sort of risky physical activities they can engage in during season and in the off season, and so I wouldn't be surprised if there's also contract stipulations about how they're using social media, which frankly also poses a PR risk to leagues. So I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I think that's probably appropriate when you're talking about a professional athlete. who's being compensated for their work.
Totally, yeah. Alex, great question. And for those of you tuning in, you see me looking at my phone. I'm following the questions that are coming in. And Tyler's saying, yes, they do. Clemson football is one example. So yeah, sounds like that's definitely true. Kelly Kratz says Drexel University in Philly does a social media clean out for all freshman athletes. Any pics or comments that are inappropriate are deleted. They believe it is a privilege to be an NCAA athlete, so you must use social media responsibly. Kelly, thanks for sharing that. Social media clean out. I've never heard that term, but thanks for tuning in. We're going to be on here a little while longer. Positive Coaching Alliance Youth Sports Chat on social media. If you have questions, please chat them in. If you see me looking at my phone, it's because we're taking your questions live. James Clifton, thanks for tuning in. James is wondering, do you recommend a youth club sports team have a social media presence? Pros and cons. So it sounds like he's asking about the team as a whole. What do you think about that, Sam? Do you recommend that a youth club sports team has a social media presence?
I think it depends on how you plan to use it, what you're using it for. I think a social media presence can be fantastic for a league if you're trying to advertise and recruit more players, if you're trying to recruit the type of athletes that are consistent with your culture. And so I would say the pros are it's another opportunity for you to market yourself and to interact with the community and engage with parents and with the athletes that are part of your program. I'm not sure what age we're talking about. And I think the downside is that it takes resources. Casey, you're a prime example. You're very familiar with the amount of resources that PCA puts into social media presence. And many of the teams that I am part of now have a specific person whose job it is now to be the person who's monitoring and posting things on social media. So I think the trade-offs, if I were thinking about it as a league, would be the resources versus the benefit that you're going to get out of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, too, just in general regards to social media accounts, I think if you're posting things that your followers want to see, that it's a great way to build community. So if you're going to create a social media account as a youth club sports team, who's going to be your audience and what are they going to want to see? Are they going to want to see score updates? Are they going to want to see motivational quotes? Are they going to want to see profiles on the coaches or the athletes? And just kind of paying attention to what does your specific audience want to know about? And a majority of your content should be what your followers want to see, not what you want your followers to see. So Positive Coaching Alliance, I'm behind a lot of the social media, and so our followers love our content, and so we try to post a lot of resources in regards to youth and high school sports, all avenues. So just a couple tips. And James, thanks for asking that question again. David Jacobson tuned in. David, thank you for your question. David is wondering, what are some of the social media landmines a youth or high school coach should avoid, such as appearing to play favorites among players? David, great question. What are some things coaches, specifically, youth or high school coaches, what should they avoid?
Avoid on social media, it sounds like? Gosh, I mean, I think one of PCA's 3 main principles of positive coaching is respect, is honoring the game. And so I think one of the biggest pitfalls I see with coaches and with athletes is when they lose sight of that and they're not honoring the game. And
Did someone call me?
Okay. The high school team that won, one of the players posted something derogatory about the team that they vanquished on Instagram and either forgot or didn't care that he was on the same club team as one of the players on the rival high school team who followed him. And apparently it turned into a comment war on Instagram that blew up quickly overnight. The coaches never saw it, and the thread died, and nothing kind of ever went from it. But I think so I think maybe the red flag there is one of the things this athlete said is, the time after the game, maybe 15, 20 minutes for cool down and you're hanging out with your team, but the adrenaline and the emotion continues quite a bit longer than that, and then you're alone with your phone and that anonymity and you're making comments. So I guess another red flag, so honoring the game is one red flag, and I guess another red flag is just posting something when you're in any kind of emotional state, which I think is when we get to points where we're maybe posting something that's not respectful.
Yeah, definitely. Great insight, Sam. And David, thank you for that question. Another thing, too, that we were talking about earlier was, not only posting, but liking things. So if you're on Twitter and you like somebody else's tweet that may not represent something great, those likes still come up on people's feeds. So I could see, Sam Salvio liked this tweet that's maybe a terrible tweet, and I could see that she liked it. And it's like, what does that say about Sam? And so not necessarily what you're posting, but also being aware of what you're liking on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. So being aware of what you like and what you post.
Along those, can I jump in while you're reading the comments? I mean, the other thing I hear from athletes quite a bit, because we're really focused in this discussion, we've been focused on what people they themselves are posting. But what I'll hear from athletes sometimes is, I saw the group text back and forth, or in this case, I saw the Instagram comment thread, and I wasn't comfortable with it, but I didn't know what to do. Because it's my teammates, or I didn't. So they didn't like it. They didn't necessarily retweet it or sort of push it further out into the ether, but they see it happening and they don't take any action. And at PCA, we talk about the difference between being a bystander and an upstander. I think one of the biggest challenges facing athletes in social media use is when they see something else that makes them uncomfortable and not wanting to maybe tell on someone, or not being sure how to address that. Yeah. And I don't think there's easy answers for that. But when I talk to athletes about it, I talk about what it means to be an upstander, and that these are hard conversations sometimes that need to happen.
Absolutely. Paul Rabel, actually, U.S. lacrosse player, he recently came out with an article talking about that and cyberbullying. And one of actually his tips for youth and high school athletes was, if you see cyberbullying happening on like an Instagram post or a Twitter post or a Facebook post, is like actually commenting and showing your support for that person. So, being a positive comment. So if you see a bunch of negative comments, support that person digitally as well, and be an upstander. So we're going to be taking a couple more questions here on the youth sports chat for social media. Positive Coaching Alliance here with Sam Salvia. Alicia Dixon wrote in with a question, and I'm going to read it now. So Alicia, thank you for tuning in. So she was saying social media social media as a whole is an avenue for people to express themselves and promote ideas / humor, political discourses that each person is digesting. How can and to what extent can coaches and others using these platforms get an idea of athletes and criticize ethically without personal biases?
Read that for me one more time, the last part of the question.
Yeah, so Alicia was asking, how can and to what extent can coaches and others using these platforms get an idea of athletes and criticize ethically without personal biases? So it sounds like, how can coaches and athletes use platforms to express themselves and perhaps criticize ethically without personal biases? And maybe we need to come back to this question. Alicia, if you're still tuning in and you want to clarify a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure which, can I read it again? I'm not quite sure what angle she's, so promote ideas. To what extent can coaches and others use these platforms? Sorry, I'm just not quite sure what the question, what she's asking about that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so here with Sam Salvia, Positive Coaching Alliance, we are going to tune out now. We'll be back in about a week or so. Again, Positive Coaching Alliance is a national nonprofit. We are based here in Mountain View, California, but we have offices in 17 cities across the country. And so if you're interested in learning more about our mission, you can visit positivecoach.org. If you liked this chat, please consider clicking share. The more people that can learn about these youth sports chats and about Positive Coaching Alliance, the better. We want to make sure that every kid has a positive character-building youth sports experience. For those of you still tuning in, if you've enjoyed this feed, we hope you will click the donate button right under the feed. We depend on the support from our online community as a nonprofit, and so we appreciate your consideration. Sam Salvia, Casey Miller, we're tuning out from Mountain View, and we will see you next time.
All right.